thought I would make something to render in Bryce in Wings3D, so it would give me the opportunity to introduce some of the new features that I've discovered in using Wings3D. I don't claim to know very well at all, but I do enjoy using the software. So in the main wireframe view, right click, and we're going to use N-Cube. Now this N-Cube has fortunately already subdivided the surface of the cube like this, which is useful, because otherwise, I'll show you the way to achieve this in a different way. You can create a cube and you can select a side, press G, will select all the sides on that axis there, and then you right click and go cut and go 5 and press C, and that connects them together. And then select another one of these, it doesn't matter which one, space will deselect for you, and then press G, and that gives you that. Then right click and cut, do 5 and connect, and then space again to deselect, then select one of these, press G, and that selects all those, and then do cut, do 5, and then press C, and then that's connected those up, and you've got to this stage, which is a little bit laborious, though it does introduce some more controls. Or press N-Cube, and I'm guessing that in this little dialogue here, oh right, we've got the option to spherize it, that's interesting, and the number of cuts. So this is an interesting feature that I've not really looked at very carefully, and otherwise that's its default setting. So having done all that, we've gone nowhere and just got to where I could have told you to go straight away, but the idea is to learn things about the software, so that's what we're doing. Right, and make something to play with in Bryce. So I'll use the corner, what they call these vertex selection tool here, and select one of these vertexes and press I, and that will select all the identical ones, and you can see the corners have been excluded. Now if I use the minus key, it'll retreat the selection back until I've got only these 4 vertexes in the middle of each face, and then if I switch to face, that'll select all those faces. So that was just a way of selecting all the faces without having to select each face in turn, and then using the middle button you can go into rotate and select the other faces. Right, the next control I'm going to use is Intrude. So right click, context sensitive menu, Intrude, and holding down the shift key allows you to do it in large steps, and holding down the control key allows you to do it in small steps. So just moving the mouse left and right lets you control the level of intruding. You can also use your mouse wheel and the mouse button to change your view, so you can see what's going off inside the shape before you go back to intruding again. Left click to go back to intruding. Right, what I want to do is intrude it down so that the inside forms solid cubes. And that looks all very well, but I'm now inside the shape here. There is a problem. And the problem is this: if I select vertexes and then press space and then just click on a vertex in the corner, if I can get hold of it, space and click there. Alright, so it's a bit fiddly this. I'll try again. There, right, I've got a vertex. Now I right click and go move, and move it in the Y direction. You can see the corners have not all joined together. The intruding has brought these sides in, but they've all remained independent. But there is a way past this. We click on the main shape, so we've selected everything, right click and clean up. And what this does, within a certain margin, it welds, or joins I should say, the points together. So now if I select this point alone and move it in the y-axis, it is now connected to those other faces, so it's not just moving this individual corner of that face as it was before. So that's handy, and it's important for what we're going to do next. Is if you have these lots of little corners that are all coming together very close but not really joining, then there's certain functions that no longer work. Right, if I select the entire shape and go to the corners and press C, that connects those corners together, and you can see the distribution of these is all in the diagonals there, and that will create one pattern in the way I'm going to do things, but it's not the pattern I want. So I right click again, select all the faces this time, right click, and that gives me the option to tessellate. So if I triangulate these faces now, you can see that the diagonal's been put in, but they've been put in a different pattern. Now if I then select one of these diagonals and press I for identical, and then right click and try and bevel, I'm trying to bevel now, but nothing's happening. What's happened here is the triangulation process has as it did before, generated points that are very close together, which means that the beveling operation can't function because it doesn't have any space to work into because of the position of these corner points that have created these lines. So, knowing this but not being able to show it very easily, I'd have to go in and start tweaking a corner out. Well, you've seen it before, so I won't bore you with that. Just select the entire shape, right click, and clean up again. Now, press space to deselect everything. We're going to select a diagonal line, press identical now. Although it looks like it did before, there are no corners that are right next to each other, and it will allow me to bevel. So I can now bevel the shape, which allows me to do that to the shape, which is a bit interesting. Now if I again press Control down, I can do it in discrete step, and I'll just use one step, so that's 0.1 there up on the left hand side, it shows it there. And then I'll right click and I'll extrude the shape, use normal, and holding the Control key down, extrude it a bit, so that's now, I can go 2 or 0.1, I'll go 0.1, right, and now press plus, and that selects the sides that are adjacent, so you can go minus and that deselects the sides that are adjacent to the selector, or plus and that selects them in. There's also the option to do it on this select menu up here if you wish. Right, Control Z will take me back to them being selected. Now press S to smooth those, right, so that's smooth the outer, and then go select and inverse, much like the two-part cube, but we're not going to split it this time. Press S to smooth the other surface, and then go select and do inverse again, and then smooth again, and then go select, inverse, and smooth again. Right, what we're going to do, well, the render are going to be for the, I want to do some curvature filtering on this for the final render, so what I'm doing is building up nice geometry for that effect to work with. And what I'm looking at here, using the mouse wheel to zoom in, is that I've got a bit of a sharp edge on the inside here. So I've created this sharp internal corner. Now for the final operation, select the entire thing, and I can either use S smooth, or I can use do Sabian subdivision, which I'm not really sure. It just changes the way that the geometry is broken, but there's a technical reason, but I'm not really aware of. That obviously takes some time, so this will be dependent on the power of the computer you're using, and probably how much memory you've got and things like that. That you do eventually run into limits where things don't happen for quite a long time. In fact, I've found that do Sabian subdivision tends to take quite a lot longer than just smoothing. So if you have a computer, you're probably better off just doing this smoothing operation. You can see this progress bar at the bottom. It's telling me what it's doing and how far it's got. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to export this entire object in the, you can see now it's done its thing, wavefront format. So that's now my completed object. I can see it in a kind of shaded mode by clicking on this little icon in the top left here, so that there's a rough idea of what it's going to look like in Bryce, but obviously I'm going to put some material on and light it nicely. But it's not really part of this tutorial, so I'm just going to show you it's exporting and importing. So File, Export, and in this wavefront format OBJ, it'll come in pre-smooth, which which is good, because if it's too complex a geometry, then Bryce won't be able to smooth it itself. It'll tend to cause Bryce to hang at that point, so getting in pre-smooth handy when you are dealing with a smooth shape. So I just launch Bryce here, and that means that it'll give us a chance to finish exporting. The exporting process, it seems to do this first bit quickly, and then there's something at the end that gets tied up with the smoothing. So while ever Wings is not responding, it's not managed to export the file yet, so there's no point in trying to load it into Bryce until it's completed that operation. Right, back in action now. So we're back under my control here. Go into Bryce, File, and Import Object, and it's in here somewhere where I've just been saving it. Here we go. Object. I'll just say yes to that. A little dialog to indicate what its progress is. And then there's an object here. I'll just enlarge it a bit, sit up on the ground. What you find is that the bounding box for the object itself, there's often a little gap, so if you want it to look like it's definitely on the ground, you have to sometimes get hold of it, tweak it down to the ground level, and then for something like this I'd probably move the camera around and let's have a look what we've got in the end, roughly speaking. I get the camera positioned. Usually if you want it to look like a fairly small object, you want a narrower field of view. I'll just square this up as well so it's not occupying quite so much of the screen, so there you go. And at this point really, I suppose that's the end of the tutorial, so I hope you found that interesting, and it'll encourage you to experiment with Wings3D, which as I say is a nice software to use.